Thank you, Ceann Corder. Taoiseach, I think by any standard, the past few days has been damaging to government. Another episode which has been damaging to this government, which has been so short-lived. And by extension, I think the last few days have been damaging to politics also. We had the spectacle of a senior member of your government exposed for engaging in what can only be described as grubby activity for grubby purposes by leaking a confidential document to a rival union while the government was engaged in negotiations, and those negotiations were still in process with a licensed union. Now, you described this and you say that the Taoiseach described it as an error of judgment. It was that, but it was wrong. And do you accept that the Taoiseach's actions were wrong last year? And will you ask him to admit that now publicly? There's a lot of weasel words yesterday, but I mean, it's either wrong or right. Do you accept that it was wrong? And will you ask the Taoiseach to admit that? And, you know, you're engaging in some of these weasel words yourself now by talking about the essentials of the agreement. No, there were very minor elements of it included in the press release. That was a 5-page document. The document in question was, you know, it was a 108-page document. So there was an awful lot more there that was in negotiation and was subsequently then agreed. But what added insult to injury, Taoiseach, was the fact that the Taoiseach ludicrously dressed this all up as somehow having a legitimate objective and laughingly claimed that he was honouring government commitments. Now, this insults people's intelligence. I think most people saw this episode for what it actually was. It was patently untrue for the Taoiseach to claim that. And he engaged in a deliberate distortion of the truth. And very regrettably then, in the last couple of days, this distortion was then repeated by a succession of Fine Gael ministers, though they are your ministers as well, and you have to accept that, going on the airwaves and trotting out cynically crafted spin lines. And I heard you repeating some of those too, Taoiseach, and that's beneath you, I think. So it's been very damaging to public trust in politics. And what I'm asking you now is to take steps to restore that trust. Get the Taoiseach to admit what this actually was. It was wrong. Will you now, Taoiseach, undertake an immediate review of the Code of Conduct for office holders, for those people in government who, you know, are required under what's there at the moment in terms of the code, where they're required to honour that code. But it seems that it's okay with you for members of your government to personally interpret that code as it was. Okay, it seems, for the Taoiseach to personally interpret that message, that this was a confidential document and not for circulation.
Taoiseach, please.
No, I think that's not a correct interpretation of where I stand in relation to the Code of Conduct. As far as I'm concerned, there's an obligation on all members of the current government to adhere to that code in the spirit and in the principle of that code. And that's something I would hold strongly by. I have made it very clear that I regard what the Taoiseach did in the last government was not best practice, was inappropriate, and was wrong. It's the wrong way to do things. I've said that. And I think the Taoiseach himself has accepted that, and he's apologised for an error of judgment in relation to that. In relation to the agreement itself, it was a 210 million agreement. Now, obviously, the contractual, and also, you know, there's a separate issue around this as well in terms of the Competition Authority and its approach to all of this. In terms of the Competition Authority have very negative views of collective agreements with independent contractors, and have taken actions in relation to these type of agreements in the health service now for quite some time. So that's something that hasn't been highlighted in the context of this. But be that as it may, in my view, the essentials were out very early in terms of this. 210 million, you can take, I think it was 120 million for FEMPI, for the reversal of FEMPI, about 80 million for the chronic disease management. I have the statement from the IMO here. It has, as you know, there's quite significant detail in that document, and that's very early in April, on the 5th to 6th of April, and it goes right down to maternity leave, contribution to locum costs, and so on. So there was a lot of detail there at that stage. Why the necessity to send it on to the NAGP? In my view, it should have been published earlier. That's my view, and I think most people in this House at the time called for the early publication of that agreement with GPs, because it does involve very significant public money and involves investment in our health services. And into the future, it seems to me that collective agreements of this sort with independent contractors will be more difficult because of the application of the competition law and the competition authority in itself. So I'm very clear in relation to this, and have been. And I think it was important that the Taoiseach did address the issue in the House and did take questions on it yesterday at some length, and acknowledged that he wouldn't do this again, and that it was an error of judgment on his part, but that he did it from his perspective for the best of good reasons and motivation.
Deputy Shortall.
Taoiseach, an error of judgment is not the same as saying that something was wrong. And, your deputy knows that as well. He made that point. Look, you're engaging in this distortion also. That agreement was not signed off by the IMO until the 16th of April, and it wasn't published then by the department for another month after that. Now, look, the Code of Conduct applying to a Taoiseach says office holders should respect confidences entrusted to them in the course of their official duties. Now, quite patiently, it is clear that the Taoiseach, when he was Taoiseach, did not do that. So I'm asking you to address this problem, because it seems that the Taoiseach is of the view that that code is open to personal interpretation. And that should not be the case. And Taoiseach, you have a responsibility now to restore some element of trust in government negotiations. Over the coming months and years, unions, employers, social partners are going to be asked to engage with the government in negotiations. Can they trust the government in those negotiations? It seems from the actions of the Taoiseach the last year that they can't do that, because he interprets things to suit himself. So you need to take action now as Taoiseach to restore trust. And I'm saying that a starting point is to review the Code of Conduct, and it's also to request the Taoiseach to admit that this was wrong.
Taoiseach.
Three things. First of all, I think the Taoiseach yesterday in his speech said it was an error of judgment. He said he wouldn't do this again, and he's made that clear. Secondly, the IMO were very clear when it published this in a press release. It basically said, following months of negotiations, the IMO announces details of 210 million investment secured from the government for general practice. Sorry, but you've said the opposite. I'm not twisting anything. I just make this happened. This can't be twisted because it happened. It was published. Again, look, I didn't interrupt you, Deputy, and I really would appreciate if you gave me an opportunity to answer the question. The second point I would say to you is this. The second point, on the issue of trust. On the issue of trust.
Wait now. Look,
could I say...
Deputy Taoiseach, sorry, my apologies. Deputy Shortall, please resume your seat. Let the Taoiseach answer, please, without interruption.
On the issue of trust, may I say that I've met with ICTU, I've met with IBEC, I'm expanding the social... I beg your pardon? Yeah, but sure, Deputy... Well, I won't say. I won't respond. Again, I've met with ICTU, I've met with IBEC, I've expanded the social dialogue unit within my department, and in many ways I'm engaging and developing and building trust with the social partners, and will build a stronger trust with the social partners, because that's in my DNA, and that will happen as Taoiseach, and I will ensure, along with my government colleagues, that we work collectively with the social partners to take the country through what is the greatest challenge it has in terms of a global pandemic, to keep our economy and the edifice of our economy intact,
Thank you,
to
Taoiseach.
protect
Time
people's
is up.
livelihoods, and to work in health and education and housing. Those are the essentials for the people out there watching.
Time is up, Taoiseach.
Those are the issues that they care about most. And those are the issues that they want this Oireachtas to focus on, and indeed the government to focus on. And as Taoiseach, I'm going to do that. And I will not be distracted. And I cannot be held accountable for what the last government did. The general election is where the last government was held accountable. The next general election will be where this government is held accountable in terms of its programme for government and its agenda.
Deputy